Hi, and thanks for watching. What I'm going to tell you today is the story of why Canada speaks French and English. Now, what you're looking at now is some Aboriginal people in one of the first encounters ever with a European ship. They had complex encounters for hundreds of years, but everything changed in 1759 with the fall of Quebec. Here's an artist rendering of the Battle of Quebec. Now you can see there's the St. Lawrence River. It's full of British ships of all sizes. Some are just canoes, some are big ships, some are transport vessels. And here's what happened. They would get off the ships in the middle of the night and go over here to the cliffs of Quebec. Quebec actually sits on a cliff where the St. Lawrence becomes narrow. So from the Atlantic Ocean all the way to Quebec, it's wide enough for big sailing vessels such as this one on the side, but it gets narrow at Quebec. That's why it's such a strategic strong point. Now, the British were running out of time. It was getting late in the season, so they were desperate. So you can see literally this is what happened. They scaled the cliffs, and here's a really cool fact. Scottish Highlanders, in other words, those super brave fighters who wore kilts and are usually big and strong and rowdy in all the best ways of those stereotypes. They scaled the cliffs, and by the time the French woke up in the morning, Montcalm was alarmed to see that some of the British were already in formation, ready to fight. Now, the battle didn't last very long, for the element of surprise won the day. General Wolfe, who led the British, died in battle. General Montcalm, who led the French, died of a wound he suffered. He actually died the next day. But artists always picture both of these men dying in a very brave way, and I'll be showing you pictures of the death scene of both of them very soon. But you can see the stereotypically brilliant strategic fighting pattern of the British over here. They're all in their perfect ranks and lines, waiting for the French to come out. And the French were caught totally off guard. It was pandemonium. What a fearful sight it was. For the battle lasted only one day, and all of what you see in the horizon went from French to English forever on that fateful day. Here's what the old city of Quebec looked like the day after the infamous fall of Quebec. It almost looks like a World War II era wreckage, for that's how strongly it was pummeled by not only cannons, but by fire. They wanted to burn down any resistance. And that's a common psychological ploy that occurs. You basically almost humiliate your enemy into wanting to accept good terms. The British left no doubt who the victor was. Here's the very famous image of General Wolfe dying. You can see all of the people around with looks in their face of, oh no, the great general might die. And unfortunately he did succumb to his wounds after he had got word that England had won the day. Now, fun fact, General Wolfe's body after his death was put in a rum cask to preserve it, and it was brought all the way back to London, where they had a full state funeral, and it was one of the biggest funeral parades in English history. That's how high he is held in the esteem of the British public still today. And here you see the Marquis de Montcalm, the last hope of French resistance in North America. This is an artist's depiction of his death, and I know it has him dying on the battlefield. That's an artistic inaccuracy, for he died the next day in his bed, and unfortunately he was able to survive to find out that Quebec fell. To some people, he kind of has the image of Robert E. Lee does in the South. Obviously, that doesn't mean I condone any of the horrific things that the South did in the Civil War, but Montcalm symbolizes almost a lost cause of when New France was still French and all the world lay before them. And with his death, the hopes of New France were dashed forever. Now you might be thinking, is that Ben Franklin? And yes, it is. The reason he's important is because after New France became British, he was convinced that all of the French people there would want to join American colonies in the future. And in fact, during 1776, Ben Franklin went with a raiding party to Quebec to try to get them to become the 14th colony to join the United States. Franklin's dream of the people of Quebec and of Montreal joining the American Revolution's cause was dashed when he was very surprised to learn how well they were doing under British, I don't want to say captivity because it wasn't that, under British rule is a better way to phrase it. Now you can see that's Quebec City soon after the fall of Quebec. Those are British officers regimenting and regulating the townspeople, and they very quickly accepted British rule for this reason. Britain promised them that they could keep their Catholic religion as long as they accepted the British flag flying over their buildings. It was clearly hard for some people, but overall it was as good as it could be for the French. They still could manage to have pride in their culture and their language as long as they admitted that the British flag is the flag that'll fly forever. These are Acadian people, and the Acadian people lived in what is now the maritime Canadian provinces of Nova Scotia and New Brunswick. They were French, and in 1755, the British took over the area with the fall of the Louisbourg fort, and all of these people that you see were sent down to Louisiana. Now, you might wonder, Canada, Louisiana, what does that have in common? Well, you might know that New Orleans has quite a proud French heritage still to this day. And the reason is because these Cajuns went down there and became the Cajuns. So Acadian and Cajun is basically the same word, just with a different dialect. So all these people left Nova Scotia and New Brunswick and were sent down to the beautiful city of New Orleans, where their descendants still live to this day and keep the proud French culture alive. So what you're seeing in this video is within Quebec proper and within Louisiana and other places, the pride of the French and their wonderful culture will never fall. On the eve of the fall of Quebec, which you see right in the middle, here's what North America looked like. Rupert's Land in green was basically owned by the King of England. Now you see in purple around the Great Lakes and the St. Lawrence and all the way down the Mississippi is French. The 13 colonies, which you can see are in green, and before USA became a country, all the way up to Newfoundland, Halifax, etc., was all English. Here, where Fort Duquesne is, that's Pittsburgh by the way, this yellow strip between the purple and the green is where Native Americans still were allowed to be free. But you could see with French on this side, English on this side, unfortunately it was only a matter of time till they would get squeezed out and sent west. That's a story for another day, and a very sad one at that. I just want to make very clear to the viewers that French basically had a lot of the interior and England had the coast. After the fall of New France, everything that's purple at the snap of the fingers became green, or in other words, became British. So there was no more claims in North America for France, except for a very small island that you could barely see under Newfoundland. It's actually two islands called St. Pierre and Miquelon, but they're so small they don't even show up on this map. So it went from basically having half of North America to two little islands that are both smaller than Manhattan. I'm doing a quick fast forward here. I know I've been talking mostly about the fall of New France, which happened in the middle of the 1700s. The photograph I'm showing you now is actually from 1867. when Canada became a country. That is Johnny MacDonald, Canada's first Prime Minister. He's surrounded by all the dignitaries who said, Quebec has fallen, but we still will have a country where English and French are both not only welcome, but encouraged. And that set the template for Canada still to this day, taking in people from different areas of the world and letting them all practice their religion, their cultural customs, and everything else that they wanted in total freedom. That's extraordinarily important to me, and it should be to all Canadians, and in fact all people in the world. And because the French and English had been fighting for over 1,000 years, let's just say from William the Conqueror in 1066, he obviously invaded from France to England, all the way till when World War I happened. That was the first major time that England and France were allies. And a big step for English and French relations in the great scope of history was 1867, when Canada said, French and English might have had problems in the past, but let's work together to make this country as great as can be. I'm proudly Canadian, and I'll have a lot more videos on the history of Canada as time goes on. Thanks so much for watching. Don't forget to like and subscribe. And also don't forget that in case anything is ever important enough to you, there can be 1,000 years of problems, but you personally can do your part to try to fix it. Have a great day.